Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Wednesday, December 22nd, and our guest tonight is Whitley Strieber. And I've called this show New Book, New Year for a lot of reasons, and you'll find out all of that tonight in our conversation. And before I jump through the lengthiest bio known to man, let's just get straight to the show. And here's the thing. I have had Whitley on this show so many times over the years. You can go back and listen to any previous broadcast and pick up the bio, and certainly it is below. But Whitley, welcome back to the show, young man. I just want to jump straight into it. Unless you want me to talk about screenplay adaptations, your complete book list, your complete bio, radio, television, and all. Do you want me to go through all of that?
Yes, I do. I don't think so. I couldn't go through all of it myself. I've been a busy boy.
Yeah, you really have. You really have. And when I've had so many guests on the show like yourself that are friends, and I've always felt that, when you've been doing this show for a decade now, and how many times can you come on as a guest and a friend and listen to your bio get read again? And, so there you go. But the bio was below, and Whitley, we haven't talked for 24 hours. How you been?
Right. Yeah. You were, Jimmy's going to be on my Christmas show starting on Friday, and we recorded that yesterday. So
yeah. And
it was dynamic, Jimmy. It was an incredible, really, really exciting stuff.
Well, see, you know what was the best part of that? I wanted to steal one of your lines from our conversation. Everybody can go to Unknown Country, and which I always ask everybody to do for all of Whitley's stuff and the new stuff and this new Christmas special that he's put together. It's myself.
It'll be up on Friday. The special.
Yeah, it's Linda, myself, and who was the third?
Uri Geller.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Oh, man. So, but the reason why, and I say this so often with you, Whitley, in that you are somebody that I've always, your level of excellence and the way that you carry a conversation in an interview is something that I've always aspired to. And I have listened to you for so long now, and I've stolen so much from you. But Unknown Country and what you've been doing over there is just amazing.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you very much. You said you wanted to steal a line, and
the line. Oh, see, that's why. You see, you're much sharper than I am.
No, I'm not.
The line that I wanted to steal, you go. So, Jimmy, you just want to riff?
Yeah. Well, I can riff as you can riff. We can all.
Yeah. It was just a great line. You want to riff? Let's go. And we did. I've got tears. That was such a funny line. You want to riff? Now I actually want to start here because our time on your show was compressed, and there was a few moments, and I know you're going to go, that's right. There were a few moments where we started to light some fires, and we almost took off and lost control, and I loved that. And so I think tonight we should riff a little bit.
Well, I took off and lost control many years ago, so.
And here's the thing. this is where I want to start. You left the country, and you had told me 3 or 4 months ago. You and I were trying to get together. We don't need to discuss that now. But you told me, you said, Jimmy, I'm out of here. And I'm going to go to England, and I'm going to go and write my book. I'll see you when I return. And I was kind of bummed about it. You're my friend, that I don't get to see you for a few months. But you are back. And did you get the book done?
The book's finished. It's in copy editing. And I'm going to shake the copy editor's tree in a couple of days, see where she is. And then it will, once the copy edit is finished, it'll go to proofreading, and we will be we'll be rolling. I think it'll probably be sometime in January. I'd hope for December, of course, but it's not going to happen.
Can I ask you a question? And I'm sure that everybody wonders about this. The publishing industry is a strange beast, and until you are battling that beast personally, you just don't have any knowledge of it. But once you've written the book, and you've written many, once you've written the book, the editing stage, how difficult is that, and how important is it? What gets done?
Well, I'm my own publisher now. I publish through my own company, and I have a friend, Mitch Horowitz, who was my editor at Tarcher Penguin for years. He edited The Key, Afterlife Revolution. No, he didn't edit that. I'm sorry. He edited The Key, Solving the Community Enigma, and Supernatural. And then they shut down Tarcher Penguin, and he's out there. He doesn't edit anymore. He does other things. But he wanted to. We had dinner in New York about 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Well, I'd love to see the book." And I thought, great. He's one of the best editors in the business. Maybe he'll give me some editing input. And so what happens is, 3 days later, he writes me back, and he sends a preface. He's written a preface to the book, and he calls it the most important book about this subject that's been written since Passport to Magonia was published by Jacques Vallée in 1969, that fundamentally changed everything about the way we think about the close encounter experience and aliens and so forth. So that was my editor. And that was a pretty good edit, in my opinion. When you're in the publishing business, everything moves much more slowly. Like you send a book in, if they've bought it, then you'll probably see your editorial comments within a few months. And then it'll be another year before the book is published. But in Whitley Strieber's world now, that's all very concentrated, because I've got the visitors involved in this, and they don't have the same timeline at all. Like when a book's finished, they don't understand why it's not out. And so, when I say it's finished, then as far as they're concerned, let's get it out there. So it'll be out there as soon as possible. If I was in the regular publishing business, it would not be.
Are we talking about the Mitch Horowitz?
Yeah, we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A major guy, right?
Yeah. Major guy, major brain, and great visionary. But no, I did not know he was from the publishing industry, and I thought I knew Mitch pretty well. So he was your editor over at Penguin.
Right, he was.
I never knew that about Mitch.
Yeah, and they pulled Tarcher Penguin because the types of books that they have a basic antipathy towards sort of the whole supernatural, non-physical, extraordinary world in the whole New York publishing business, just in general. And with Jeremy Tarcher passed away, it took him about 3 months or maybe 6 months before they just pulled the whole thing because with Jeremy, I think he'd had a contract that they had to keep it open during his lifetime, but then when he passed on, they didn't have to anymore, so they dropped it. Not that it wasn't doing well; it was doing fine. They just don't like it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Penguin. Yeah, they just have their thing, right? Or their thing.
Yeah, they do what they want to do, and they they want to be in the secular world intellectually, and in the straight kind of fiction world in terms of fiction.
Right.
And they have their thing, and they're very successful, and I applaud them. I think they do a wonderful job of what they do. This is not what they do.
This is not what they do.
No.
And speaking of this and that subject, here we are heading into the holidays at the end of 2022. And it's been a strange year for our community. Emotions have been swinging in both directions. And you're in the middle of all of it. How do you feel right now? How do you think 2022 was? And are we going to see anything this year, or is it just another episode of we've got to go into a holding pattern?
That's a good question. There is something going on right now which suggests that the Department of Defense is going to back off, which is the bellwether. The New York Times is a real bellwether. In other words, what the Defense Department's going to do, you read about it 6 weeks before it happens in the New York Times, because they've got obviously very good reporters who are closely connected, and it's their job to find out what's going on. And a story rather was published a few weeks ago that basically debunked everything. And it was done by one of their Pentagon reporters, and it did not have any attribution in it at all. It's simply, the only name was Pentagon officials. And in other words, it could just as easily have simply been written by him on their request or not. I mean, it wasn't a real news item. It was more of an opinion piece.
Right.
And basically it debunked everything. Now, Ronald Moultrie, the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, has said that they have no evidence at all of any UFO crashes, materials, or anything like that at all. And here's the thing. He might not be lying. And the reason is something that's two words. Those two words are pencils up. Pencils up means that meeting after meeting has been held without any record being kept. Back in 1988, General Exon told me that he was still going to Wright Field every couple of weeks to consult, because most of the things that they had done and discovered were pencils up. Nobody was keeping a record because it was too secret. And I know people in this field now, to this day, who never, absolutely never, when they have meetings on this subject, whether they are in the Defense Department or in private industry, keep a record. Absolutely never. Just as a matter of course. So the truth is, someone at Moultrie's level is not going to know. He's literally not going to know what's going on. So when he says we have no evidence of this, he's telling the truth. He doesn't have any evidence of this, but that doesn't mean it's not going on.
He, that old, it's one of the most quoted things, right? On a need to know basis. And when we're getting into a subject like that, not only with ET and crash retrievals, but there's other things too as well, where we're talking about a very compartmentalized not only defense system but subcontractor system, and what is going on in the special access programs. That's it. So you're right.
Yeah.
He's not lying. It's because he doesn't know and never will know.
Right. Exactly. He never will. And especially when it's outside of the Defense Department itself, in private industry. And to be quite frank, private industry has made a lot of money on this stuff, only it's not been evenly spread around. Certain companies where there was already an established system of classification. In other words, there were already read-in people that could take this and run with it. They got the gold, and their competitors did not. So what's going to happen then? What's going to happen then is if those competitors find out that they have been competing against people who are making things like unbelievably strong prosthetic devices like artificial knees and stuff, because they got technology that came from the Roswell craft, they're going to sue, and deservedly, rightly so, because they had the patents are going to be in the names of people who did not actually invent what the patents say they invented. That's fraud. So it's a big can of worms, a huge can of worms. And someone who is forced, like Moultrie or the people above that level, in the government, to respond in some way within the context of the law, cannot know this, because if they do know it, then they are in violation of the law by not doing what they should do and report this as criminal activity.
No,
so they don't get to know.
No, they don't. They don't.
And they don't want to know.
And here's the thing about not only the New York Times, and especially when you're writing an opinion piece, which is the news today. The news is nothing but opinion. It's very little fact. But here's the thing. Isn't it the job of a reporter to do just a little bit of work and go and investigate the obvious here? If that is the position of Moultrie and the Pentagon today, and ODNI and the Department of Defense and everybody else that's involved with this, and it's an about face from the report that they released to Congress and to the public last August in 2021, if it's a complete policy change and the facts have flip-flopped, isn't that the story? Shouldn't a reporter be asking those questions? Why did you state this before, and why are you saying this now? It's two different things. How much has changed?
I don't think any reporter on the Pentagon beat would write that important story, which is you're right, it is an important story, but I don't think they would, because they would not be able to function on the Pentagon beat anymore after that. They would be blindsided, and they would become toxic, and they would have to do something else. They'd probably end up on the society pages or something. They'd be thrown out basically by, if the source dries up, then the reporter has to do something else, and they all know this and they live with this.
It's kind of it's almost journalism 101, where you have a choice. You can play the long game and do a 2-year investigation piece, right? And go and do that. Or you could just go after the low-hanging fruit. And in this case, it's the low-hanging fruit, man. It's right.
It's always going to be the low-hanging fruit, because if they go deeper, they get in trouble, and then they don't even have any low-hanging fruit to go for.
Yeah,
they're out of the business.
I'm an okay intelligence person. I'm in the middle. I'm the exact person that you need to be writing for, because I can see through this, and if I can see through this, so can millions of others.
Yeah, but most people are very passive, and they will, especially about something that doesn't matter in their lives. it does not matter in their lives. And this doesn't matter in the lives of many people. There's nothing that changes your life more profoundly than something like a close encounter of the third kind, or even a close flyby of a UFO that you know is real. That changes you forever. But that doesn't happen to the broad mass of people. Or if it does happen, they don't remember it. And so they don't care. And the government knows that. But if the truth came out, boy, would they care. And the government, the people at the top know that too. So no, they're not going to be telling all. They're going to tell as much as they have to tell. And I think that they can easily control Congress by simply saying, okay, if we say this is real, then all of these people who have been abducted are going to start coming forward and demanding help and demanding money and making a lot of noise. And if we are backed into a corner, then we have to say, we know it happened to you and there was nothing we could do about it. We don't fully understand it, and there is nothing we can do about it now. And that will be worldwide headlines for a long time.
Yes. And the alternative, and this is the part where for me, and certainly for you, is the most shocking and the most frustrating at the same time, which is this. It's the worst case scenario is they keep their heads in the sand and they're hoping that nothing's going to go down, and then something's going to happen that's not going to be in their control, and that those experiencers and abductees that you just referenced, they'll be really pissed off if it goes that way, and they do the "see, I told you so," and the government's going to have to come out and have all of these admissions. That's a worse. The better thing to do would be to get out in front of it, which they've almost done, Whitley. We were right there.
Yeah, they almost did it, but then they backed off. And I think they backed off because they basically sat down with Congress and told them the truth, that they're going to have to admit this, and they can't admit it. And especially because if you look at the record, you find that the Air Force and other Air Force intelligence and other intelligence agencies have been debunking this for a long time. There's a very close relationship between Philip Klass and the Air Force. The reason being that he was the editor of aerospace oh heck, I'm blanking. I'm not blanking. I'm screwing up the name. He was the head of Aerospace at Technology Week, and I know that's not the correct name, but most people will be able to figure out what I was talking about, which relied for its stories on leaks about secret aircraft from the Air Force, controlled leaks that no one thought Aerospace Week and Technology was stealing from the Air Force. I mean, it was a handshake deal. And in return, he did this debunking, I'm quite sure. He suggested as much to me one of the first times I met him, when he was trying to get me, he was saying sort of, you're a patriot and I know you're on side, so you need to play the game. You need to say that you have figured out what happened to you and it wasn't what you thought. And I said, I can't do that because it's not true. And he said, well, aren't you a patriot? And then I figured out that he was basically getting his scoops in return for doing this. And there are other writers who have done the same thing, who have gotten scoops from the Air Force in return for debunking this. And these people, the abductee community, are just total cannon fodder. I mean, this is the last community of people who can safely be bullied publicly.
Yeah.
That's why it's no problem to tell for someone to tell a rectal probe joke on the Tonight Show or something. That's funny. The fact that they're talking about somebody getting raped, well, you don't have to go there. We're laughing now. We're having fun. Even that movie Nope contains which is a cool movie about an alien abduction. I mean, it's at least it was cool for me until it turned out that the UFO was just a bunch of sheets. But that was okay. It was still a good movie, but it has a rectal probe joke in it. And it never crossed the mind of the writer and director that there was anything wrong with that, with doing that to someone, because every person who's had that happen to him feels the pain of being laughed at for having been raped. And I certainly do.
Yeah. There is when we talk about somebody like Philip Klass and the he was a paid shill, paid informer, debunker, as well as misinformation agent on the payroll of I would say multiple agencies.
Probably.
And yeah,
I don't think he was on the payroll of any agencies.
Oh, I do. I don't think
so. He's on the payroll of anyone. He didn't need He didn't need to be on their payroll. Anyway, it would have been that would have been very against the law. The government can't propagandize the American people,
but they do.
Illegal.
They do it. Yeah. Well, Project Mockingbird happened. Right?
They do it. I know they do it. I'm not saying they don't do it.
Right.
But I think that paying somebody outside who's on the outside, whose tax returns are going to be visible and so forth, I'd be very surprised if they did that. But paying him in scoops for his magazine, oh yeah, no question, that was almost certainly done.
Yeah. Well, I in this community, Bill Moore. I don't know. I think a lot of money changed hands, but
listen, there are a lot of people in the UFO community who are not what they seem. A lot.
Yes, I know. I know. Let's not do that now. We can do that.
We won't go down that road. I don't want to go down that road anymore.
Yeah. We'll do that on the phone later.
We know who you are, guys. You can't fool us.
And but I want to go back to your point. Since we're riffing tonight, in that, if we go back historically, and for those out there, I think that there are three, and I'm reviewing these books right now extensively, going back and looking at the historical data. I'm going back to all of the original Jacques Vallée stuff from the 1970s. Dr. Hynek's 1977 book, The Report of Project Blue Book, and Richard Dolan's UFOs in the National Security State, Volume 1. All three of them go back and look at, and especially Hynek and especially Dolan, at cases from the United States Air Force in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah.
That we don't hear about.
I did that for my book.
Yeah.
The part of my book on the military, that's where you find out what the truth is. You find it out in the first story that comes out about something. And then the next few stories are all backpedaling and debunking, and the next thing you know, it's gone. But if you do that, an amazing picture shows up. Listen, I've got some of my subscribers are in our subscriber chat room and listening to the show at the same time, and they're getting some questions. And can I there's a question that's very germane to what we're talking about right now. I'd like to bring up. Is that okay?
This is Unknown Country Part 2. That's what
okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, they're there, and it's a great group of people. What are the dangers to close encounter experiencers if the government has to admit abductions have happened? That's a really, really fine question.
That's the fundamental issue, I think.
Well, yeah, because what are these? There's all kinds of unknowns here. Like, for example, what if who's ever done the abductions and does the abductions, and they're not as common now as they once were, does not want that known, and we tell the world? Then do they lash out at the people that are going on the radio and TV and saying, yes, that happened to me, or not? Or is there going to be a backlash to people with various religious beliefs in the various religions decide that they are demons of some kind and are dangerous? And or do their friends and family who have sort of always taken it with a grain of salt then say, you're scary, I don't want to be near you anymore? Those are all great questions, and I don't think we have the answers.
Well,
we don't actually know what would happen to the experiencers if the government admitted that the abductions had happened. But
look what David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, and Lou Elizondo, even Chris Mellon, who have come forward and they have been attacked. And they've got their supporters. I'm not saying that. And abductees and experiencers are going to have their supporters, but you're going to have the attacks. And you're right, Whitley. Once you're in this subject, once you're here in this sphere, the gloves come off. It's almost like you know what it's like? It's like trench warfare in World War I.
Yeah.
4 years long, 4 years lobbing mustard gas at each other, and it's relentless, right? It just never stops. And
like I say, that's the last group of people who can safely be bullied.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. I mean, we can't bully anybody anymore, and except us. We can be bullied.
So let me ask you this. I've never asked you this question before. When we look at the amount of sightings, contact events, and of course abduction, we can throw my lab in there too as well. But that whole sphere, right? That whole lump. We're talking about millions and millions and millions of people. Is it some? If it's not real, then it's some crazy psychosis, right? And it can't be that big of an issue, a mental illness issue around the planet, And I think that's the question here. If you are going to go on the record here and attack these people. And say that, then what is it that you're suggesting? That everybody's crazy? Most of them are just normal people like you and I.
Well, like you. I'm not so sure how normal I am. I've been doing this too long. But yeah, I mean, you make a great point. And I think these people are highly vulnerable. And they do not have a friend. We don't have any friends. There's nobody on our side. There would be people on our side if this was proved to be true. I think we would have a lot of support. But we would also have problems, no question.
Well, see, and here's the issue. And by the way, my allergies are kicking butt. I've already sneezed a few times during the show. I've been hitting my mute button, and so that's
me too.
Yeah, I've been sneezing all day long, 30, 40 times. Okay, so anyway, this is the issue. If when we talk about disclosure, and for those out there, and I've said this too, that say we don't need disclosure. We've already seen, you know what? Okay. But for the millions of people out there that have been silenced, that can't say anything to their friends or their family or their employers, or that's it. They are trapped in this. They need the government to step forward and start disclosing things for them. If you don't need disclosure, that's fine. But there are millions of people on this planet that need that version of disclosure, Whitley. That's the only way forward.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And they're going to fight that. There's going to be a fight. And unfortunately, I do not think that we have Congress on our side anymore, because I think Congress has been scared off. And I think that will become evident over the course of the year. At the same time, there are people who maybe can't be scared off, and that they are going to keep the pressure up, whether they are, which political party they're in. The ones that will continue to step forward, I don't know, and therefore I don't know how effective it will be, because the House is changing sides, and the Senate is very shaky. It could change sides also. So we just don't know how that'll fall out. But I believe, wasn't Marco Rubio? Yeah. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Rubio, Gillibrand.
And Gillibrand were the two that were most vocal. And
Gallagher and Tim Burchett. They're firmly right there. But here's the thing. If the switch was flipped back in 2017, somebody told the New York Times and the rest of the media and Fox News and CNN and the BBC that it's okay to talk about UFOs now. Let's go with the reporting and don't play the X-Files music. I think that was pretty obvious.
Right.
And that switch was flipped. And then somebody's flipped that switch the other way.
Yeah, that's right. They have flipped the switch the other way. But one of my subscribers makes a point here. He's actually is a scientist himself. He says, I do see a change in the scientific community when it comes to this issue.
Yes.
There seems to be an openness to understanding these experiences versus mocking them. And he would know. I mean, he's in the scientific community, and I think he's an experiencer, if I'm not correct.
So are you asking for my comment?
No, I'm just telling you that here is a scientist who says that it's changing in the sciences. And that's very important, because if the approach to it, the attitude toward it changes in the society. The public's already used to the idea that there are aliens here. They won't even be surprised if the government admits it. The news media are much more iffy, because they've, like, for example, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times have spent more than 70 years claiming that this is nonsense. And it took a hell of a lot of courage for the New York Times to put out the Tic Tac story and the Gimbal story and the other stories they have put out about this. They really, that was journalism at its absolute best. And then the debunking stuff came along, and it was actually silly season in the Wall Street Journal, because they had an opinion piece from a pilot. He said, I've been a pilot. I've flown U-2s. I've been a pilot for 40 years. I've never seen a flying saucer. And not only that, I don't know a single pilot who's ever seen one.
Yeah,
and I don't think anyone.
What a load
I don't think they exist. Of course, what he doesn't know, if I may just finish.
Yes.
The first UFO ever seen by anybody was seen by a pilot while flying his airplane.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, we're talking about Kenneth Arnold.
Right.
And when I read that line that you just read to me, my blood boiled, because that is a complete load of crap. That pilot isn't telling the truth. And he thinks
he is, probably.
No, I don't.
He's just wrong. There's a difference between being wrong and lying.
No, I think he's lying.
He might be lying, but he's certainly an idiot.
Yeah,
but here's an idiot. An obvious idiot gets a big play in the Wall Street Journal, and the reason that happened is every editor on that editorial staff knows that the journal has made a generations-long commitment to this being nonsense, and they would very much like that to be true, and it's not true. To its credit, the Times was willing to open its door to this, even though they had made essentially the same commitment over the years. So that credit where credit is due. Then they proceed to publish this idiotic Julian Barnes story that I was talking about earlier,
Right.
which has, if you read the stories that were Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean and their colleague published, there's all kinds of quotes, there's attributions, everything, every I is dotted and every T is crossed. Then you get to this news story, and there's not a single person even quoted. I mean, he could have just written it himself.
It's an opinion piece. It's an opinion piece.
Virtually an opinion piece.
Yeah.
But it got published as a news story. And that as soon as I saw that, I thought, this is being done by someone. This is not, a reporter wouldn't just do this. And this wouldn't get past an editorial desk unless someone is saying this has to be published. Someone high up in the company. And unfortunately, I think that happened. I can't see how it, unless it was just considered too unimportant and no one really looked at it.
Julian Barnes, every time I have brought up his name, not only with guests, but in conversation with my friends, they always, Julian Barnes is a pretty good writer. He's, he's pretty good. You know what? That piece, when you read through that, it is so slanted, and is if you put it on the editorial page and leave it like that, I've got no problems with that.
No problem, but not as a news story. It wasn't a news story.
He wasn't reporting on anything.
No.
And so we shall see, though. I'm getting an echo coming back from you, from your speakers.
You are?
Yeah, they might be up a little too loud.
Okay.
Just a little too loud, Whitley.
Are you still getting it?
A little bit. Not as bad.
Well, okay.
No, that's okay. Let's stay on this. How important is it these days for getting back to like Edward R. Murrow, or reporting the news and the facts and taking life serious instead of having these opinion networks make comments on things instead of reporting the facts?
Well, before Project Blue Book, there was a lot of good reporting on this subject. There was a lot of bad reporting, but there was also a lot of good reporting on this subject, including in the Times. But then Blue Book came out, and the summary at the beginning said there was nothing to any of it. What it didn't say was that there were over 100 unsolved cases and inside the body of the report. But the media jumped. No one read the report. They just read that summary, as I'm sure the people who wrote it knew would happen. And the whole story of there's nothing in it went around the world. And the same thing happened when the crop circles, when Doug and Dave showed up with their boards on their feet, and that childish, silly story that no one in there, no mature adult would believe for a minute. And it went all around the world. I will never forget the tone of voice of the NPR reporter talking about it with laughter in her voice, or his voice. And I thought to myself, boy, talk about the blind leading the blind. And I wondered, this was before anything happened to me, but I wondered, why do they care at all? Why are they so eager to debunk this? Because it's simply fascinating, and there's no reason to attack it like this. I didn't get it at the time, and I actually still don't.
I don't either. When the film came out on the news of those two doofuses, right, out, with the rope and the thing, and they're taking this, and those guys didn't make those crop circles. No, stop with that. but yet they allowed it to spread around the world
It dominated the press, and it won the day, because you ask the average person about crop circles, and they think they're all fakes to this day, when in fact, still to this day, many of them aren't fakes. And in fact, not a lot of them that show up now are fakes, because the bloom is off the rose. You can't make money with crop circles anymore because nobody shows up. Whoever wanted to debunk the crop circles has succeeded in that. In other words, there used to be farmers were paying some people to go out in their fields and make crop formations so that they could put up a donation box and get people to come into the field and make a lot more money than they would make on the wheat that had been pushed down. But that's over. There's nobody doing that anymore. And yet there's still crop circles appearing. But here's the question. Why? And it turned out that Doug and Dave apparently had connections to the Central Intelligence Agency.
That's right.
Why in the world did the CIA care in any way whatsoever about crop formations appearing in the fields of Wiltshire in England? Why did they care so much that they would run out and organize a highly efficient debunking program that went around the world? What was up? I mean, why do they care about that?
Right.
I don't get it.
Right.
There's something behind, there's some sign, there's a secret behind the secrets that we don't know that scares somebody very badly. That is the reality of this.
Okay, why is it? And before the break, I'm going to ask you a question that I've wondered about for a long time. Why is it that this is about modern reporting? From pilots in the military, they're only focused on that. These 144 cases, another 200 have come in. These recent things since 2021. And again, going back to low hanging fruit, why is it, Whitley, that an Air Force case like Bentwaters, Rendlesham, where you've got Jim Penniston, you've got Charles Halt, you've got John Burroughs, they're all alive, they can all testify, the paperwork is there, everything is stated, all of the medical records are there, and it's right, but they don't want to go and check that out. There are other cases here that are very, very important that are also military and in their backyard. That was in the United Kingdom. And,
right.
and they're not interested in that?
That amazes me. And it's the case. It is the truth. And, what I see here is people who are scared of something that they don't want to talk about at all, and who don't know what to do, basically. There's an inconsistency and like the Air Force is protecting itself, clearly. That's what all the debunking is about. And the reason they're protecting themselves is simple. They are charged with protecting us from threats from above. And this is a threat from above, and they can't protect us from it. So instead of admitting that, they're saying it's ridiculous. It doesn't exist. These people are all nuts. Or being silent. Because all through the tic-tac and all of the period of disclosure and openness and so forth that went on, the Air Force remained entirely silent. And now the Air Force is, I think, gaining the upper hand again. I think it is probably opening up to people behind closed doors in the Congress and in the higher levels of DOD, and saying that this is a problem. And you know what? I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all, because I don't think they are responsible. We're always blaming our guys for this, and that's like the dog is some jerks kicking a dog with a boot. The dog's not interested in the jerk. The dog's biting the boot. And that's what we do. We bite the boot. The boot here being the Air Force keeping its secrets. But who's wearing the boot? It's very simple. The answer is that would be the visitors. They are wearing the boot. And in my new book, I go through in great detail just how they induced this secrecy from the very beginning in the late 40s. In exactly how they did it. They did it to us. And if we want to get out from under this, we got to quit biting the boot and figure out how to work together with the boot so that we can get it, we can understand what to do to make it, to enable it to stop having to kick us, because that's what it's doing. We gotta have a completely new attitude toward our own people, and to understand that they have been put in a situation where they have no choice but to keep this secret. But it's not their fault. I know this is total heresy, but it happens to be my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. Of course, anyone who knows me knows I'm always pretty sure I'm right, even when I'm right, which I generally am.
Well, okay. So if we take that, and I agree with you, but if we back up and we go to 1966, 1967, and 68, where you had in 66, well, there were sightings all over the place, but we had the now infamous, I should say, swamp gas incident in which was a product of Project Blue Book and J. Allen Hynek in Michigan. Gerald,
which he regretted until his dying day that he had ever said that.
Absolutely. And then on the heels of that, the Air Force knew at that time that this was something that they needed to absolutely stop the conversation about. That's it. This is not being talked about anymore in the public. So they do the Condon. They bring, they do everything up in Boulder, Colorado. They have the commission. They write the report. And then a year later, 1969, now that Condon report said, nothing to see here. That all paid shills on that, by the way. And so they knew the opinions. Anybody that was involved with Condon at the time that had an open mind about UFOs and what was going on, they were aced. They were taken off. They were taken off. So, and then 1969, the Air Force had the tools with Condon and everything else and swamp gas to say, nothing to see here. We're closing down Blue Book. Right. And that has been the case ever since 1969. So as close, they could have handled it differently back then. That was the approach that they took with Condon, and then of course closing Project Blue Book. But it could have been a different story today. It could have absolutely been different. Now the Air Force has to go and undo 50 years of bad faith, and it's a very difficult position that they put themselves.
I don't see how they can. The abduction started with Betty and Barney Hill. I think that was in 63.
61.
So they already knew that was happening when they debunked this and the whole thing. And they also therefore knew that what was happening, they couldn't stop. So and I have a feeling that part of the reason for the abductions was so that the Air Force would keep its trap shut. I think that's what I was talking about a minute ago. This was orchestrated by them from the outside. The secrecy that we live under now in this was created by the visitors using skilled social engineering, and they are very skilled at social engineering. That is quite clear.
Okay, we're going to take a break right here, Whitley, but I wanted to ask you a question. Okay. I saw your post the other day, and it got me thinking that Communion was listed as one of the great science fiction films of all time, right? Made the list. What, the top 10 list or something?
Top 10 list, yeah.
And very, very, you've had your own comments about the movie over the years. I personally enjoy it. And I also have the director's cut with all of your interviews that were done behind the scenes during the filming of the movie, which were quite compelling. And you were very dashing. You were a dashing young man back then. But
I dashed away, unfortunately.
But I wanted to ask you this. That scene when Christopher comes into his house, Christopher Walken, with guns ablazing, right? And shoots up the house. Did you shoot up your house?
No, I didn't. Anne was afraid that I would. And but that never went that far. I never fired the gun in the house. I never fired the gun at all, in fact, not inside or outside. But I certainly patrolled with it. That is certain. I most assuredly patrolled with that big old Mother Benelli riot gun with 10 slugs in it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a major weapon. You could have destroyed a car with that thing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably.
You have to have your shoulder. Shoulder would have dribbled out from under your skin, turned to soup.
So that was artistic license by the screenwriter and the director?
Yeah, well, I mean, they wanted to they needed a more dramatic scene. I may have even written that scene. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But, it's a movie. They need drama. And, you can't have him going around outside and then his wife says, oh, you shouldn't do that. And so he stops. There's no drama there. But if you knew Anne and she said, stop doing something you're doing, you stopped. Yeah. Well, it was definitely, it was her house and she was the boss of her own house.
It's such an intense scene.
Yeah, it's a very intense scene.
It's a very intense.
My disappointment in the film has to do with two things. One is the special effects, and they just didn't have enough money, and for various reasons. And two is I didn't like Christopher Walken with the camera on himself all the time, and because it made me look like a totally narcissistic idiot, and I'm not. I'm not narcissistic at all. I'm not going to go down the idiot road at all. I'm just leave that one lie. But but basically the film works. It does work. It works very well. It does communicate the emotional intensity of having this happen to you very well, and how it affects the whole family. It's quite clear about that.
Have you seen the outtakes? Do you remember them?
Probably. I've seen them. I was there when the film was made. I was there every day.
Right. In the outtakes, the scenes of Christopher Walken with the hypnosis sessions, in the doctor's living room in front of the fireplace. Christopher in the outtakes, you have to go and see them, everybody, if you get an opportunity to do it. He's an actor, right? He was he was in that, right?
He was. I mean, he did definitely get into it. I liked him a lot, actually. He was a lot of fun to be with. We palled around a lot, and when the film was on location in New York, we had a lot of fun. We just really did. I enjoyed him, and it's too bad it didn't last, but as a friendship, but it didn't.
Okay.
I never saw him again after the movie was over.
When we come back, we'll talk about those special effects. I do want to get your opinion on that. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, the one and only Whitley Strieber. It's a new book, and it's a new year. I'll be right back. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Please visit all of our sponsors. We're taking a quick break here. All of the links are below. We'll be right back. Check out Billy Carson's Forbidden Knowledge. ForbiddenKnowledge.com or ForbiddenKnowledge.tv, where you can get access to over 6,000 videos, movies, TV series, exclusive documentaries like the Black Knight Satellite. You can do it all for just $7.77 per month or $77 per year after the 3-day trial, which is also totally free to check out. It's all simple to do. Billy Carson is the best. It's simple. ForbiddenKnowledge.com or ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's the number 4BK. I will be hosting and emceeing the Conscious Life Expo this February 10th through the 13th at the LAX Hilton right here in Los Angeles, California. 200 speakers, including Linda Moulton Howe, Bashar, Deborah King, George Norrie, Daniel Sheehan, Scott Walter Johnstone, and David Wolf. Over 200 vendors, special events. This is the biggest event of its kind on planet Earth. You've got to come and hang out with all of us. Tickets and info at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. The links are below. On Saturday, April 1st, that's right, April Fool's Day 2023, I will be hosting the Parapod Festival at the Hyatt Regency right here in Valencia, California. It's a live one-day podcast awards. It's a film festival. It's a full-on media event. We're going to have sky watching. There's going to be a Lifetime Achievement Award presented to Linda Moulton Howe. Right now, you can submit your podcast, your film, your TV series, any of your paranormal media for consideration. You can do all of that on the links below. For info and tickets, go to parapodfilmfest.com. That's parapodfilmfest.com. April 7th through the 14th, 2023, I'll be hosting and presenting on the Hidden Secrets Seminar at Sea Cruise. From Los Angeles to the Mexican Riviera on the Navigator of the Seas. That's right, up top, a giant water slide. You've got to check out the Navigator of the Seas. It's amazing. We've got Scott Walter, Adam Apollo, Nick Pope, Brad Olson, Vivian Chauvet, Jason Shirka, Robert Grant, Ruben Langdon, and another 12 amazing speakers and presenters. It's all simple to do. Just visit divinetravels.com/Hidden Secrets 2023. You know you want to go on a cruise with me. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Whitley Strieber is with us, calling the show New Book, New Year, because that's exactly where we are at. It is December 21st today. It's winter solstice, of course. And we're three days away, Whitley, from Christmas Eve. Man, happy holiday. Yeah. Wow. Pretty nuts. Okay, I want to stay in the flow. We were talking about communion, and you brought up the question of special effects. I want to make this one comment. Again, you know what you and I have not done in the past? We've never done a deep dive into communion. I've let not the movie. I'm talking about the book. I've always let everybody else do that. And you've done so many interviews over the years about it. But I do have specific questions that I've never asked you. And so the special effects part, I think that's a great point that you brought up, because this scene, the first time that we see the inside of the ship. All right. Now, I was always okay with it. But when you look at it and you see the ship itself, and you see the beings, let's just say that, and what is going on, you can tell that it's puppets or it's small people in costume, whatever it is, and the paper mache walls and the smoke machines, right? Okay, and some lighting. We all see that, but I that never bothered me. It was the content and the intense situation that you found yourself in, and so the special effects They never bothered me. But
Well,
this,
but from my standpoint, I knew what was supposed to have happened.
that's my question.
What we wanted to happen, we had planned for, and couldn't happen because they had no money. They didn't even pay me for my book. Actually, legally, I own Communion outright because they don't own the license. They didn't pay for it.
Now, so what?
But I don't get any money for it at all.
I've never asked you this question. We know the visual that is there in the movie, but how can you describe that scene, the real version of it?
When I was in the room with the visitors?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I thought I was in a tent. I did not. I certainly didn't think I was in any kind of a flying saucer or even above ground. I had gone up in the air, which was very disorienting. I shot up in the air all of a sudden, and but it seemed to me that there was some kind of a dream. I thought I was dreaming, and then when it became more clear, I thought it was a tent, and it was like a tent. It wasn't. There's nothing fancy about it. If you told me that the walls were made of canvas, I would have not been surprised. And when you talk about the Roswell craft, they talk about balsa wood struts and very thin metal, and that was sort of what it was like. It was just flimsy and thin. I mean, it was just, I was on a cot, and I couldn't function. In other words, I was like being in a nightmare where you can't run and stuff like that.
Right.
That was what it was like, and that's what I thought I was having, was a terrible nightmare, an extraordinary nightmare. And it was dirty. I mean, there was clothes lying on the floor. Could have even been mine. And it was there was no sense of spaceship or no Flash Gordon effects or anything. It was not like being in Star Trek at all. It was just totally ordinary, like being in a little tent full of these weird spider-like beings jumping around and being very scary indeed. And then they jacked me up with this rectal probe, which is an electrostimulation device that simulates the nerve that causes an erection. And you can hear me in the hypnosis saying, where did that come from? I mean, I didn't know how. It was a circumstance under which it would not be expected for one to get an erection. Let me put it that way. There was nobody around there who was attractive enough by any means.
Right.
So, there I was with this happened, and then they took my semen right out of my body. They ejaculated me, and Jimmy, I mean, that's the most haunting part of all of this. And I think that's the core reason why the Air Force doesn't want this out, because it's not just me. It's thousands of people who are going to say, my fetus disappeared and I wasn't pregnant anymore. Or my semen, they took semen out of me and I don't know what they did with it. And that's rough stuff. That's rough stuff. I mean, I can't imagine the Air Force, commanding general of the Air Force or anyone in the DOD saying, well, we're very sorry that this happened to these people, and we don't know what happened to their sexual material and whether they have children elsewhere or not, or what happened. We don't know a thing about any of it. And we're very sorry. We couldn't do anything about it. They're not going to say that. They'll never say it. They'll never say it.
Okay. So after all of that, that's a very bad date, by the way, right? And it was
definitely a very bad date.
It was a bad date.
The worst date you could possibly imagine.
And then after all of that, in the movie, I want your comment. You guys dance.
No, right? That was made up by them. That's not in my script either. I did not dance. There was no dancing.
There was no
dancing at all.
There was no dancing.
No dancing.
Now, I'm not making light of it, everybody. That's the movie. Whitley is here. I've always wanted to know, did that thing end that way?
Now, my wife used to say that, Whitley, you basically you dance like a bus. She took me to dancing lessons at one point, just so that she could get out on a floor once in a while without being without ending up hurled onto her ass by her dance partner.
Dance like a bus. That's not a compliment, man. You can't even.
No,
turn
it was
that
not a
around.
compliment.
No, you can't turn that around. There's something positive in there. All of the descriptions, not all, but many of the descriptions of what is inside of these crafts, you always hear how clean it is, how stark it is, the stainless steel comments, the curved walls, no seams. So this is the stainless steel appearance, and it's hospital like atmosphere. And you're telling us that there was clothes on the floor, right? It's so.
I remember something on the floor that looked to me like clothes.
Right. So the opposite of clean.
It was a lived-in place for sure. And I don't know why everybody else got higher grade flying saucers than I did, but they're all getting the Maseratis and the Teslas, and I got the 1954 Ford.
But here's why I think it's important. Okay, so and there's a reason why I want everybody to understand why I'm asking the questions this way. One of the things I've always said over the years, Whitley, is although I'm not saying it's not true, but I have an issue with somebody that says, well, there was a small seat for a small being, and that I'm like, well, what else was there? Well, nothing. So you're going to travel for 1 million years, right, across the universe, and you're not going to have a bed, a pool, a bedroom, a TV set, some type of entertainment. How about everything? A kitchen. You're only going to sit in this seat, right, for 1 million years?
Because they're not traveling across the universe for millions of years at all. And I don't think they travel any significant distance in these craft that we see. I think that they step from their place to our place in a single step.
But your craft was lived in.
Yeah, absolutely. It was lived in. And that's because I think they have missions here, and they're here for a while, and then they leave.
Right.
And I think that coming and going happens under the sea, underwater, in underground places, under the Antarctic, and out in space. I think they use wormholes as their means of movement between places, or what we would think of as wormholes, and they somehow have figured out how to navigate that, because it's one thing to create a wormhole that brings two parts of the universe together for a nanosecond, and another thing entirely to create one that brings my living room and their living room together for a nanosecond, and they can walk across. But I think that's how they do it. I do not. I mean, this is just conjecture on my part. I don't have any proof, but I don't see how it could be any other way. And when they're here for missions that last a period of time, and they live where they work, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So where is all of that? I'm just looking at it from a very logical mindset, right?
There is no cultural affect at all. You don't see. No one talks about writing. No one talks about pictures on the walls,
music,
entertainment, music, food, any of that. It's never mentioned, because that's not where you are. You're not where they live. except in my case, apparently I was. I was in someone's bedroom is what it looked like, or it was like a tent. Someone had camped out in a tent and I was in their tent. And that was why initially I thought it was a criminal act. I thought I had been kidnapped and taken out into a tent, because I just completely discounted the idea that I had remembered going up in the air, because to me that was part of the hallucination. I thought I'd been drugged for a long time, and I'm still. If someone could prove to me that is what happened, I would not be surprised.
Right. Would that, from an emotional standpoint, would that, how would you take that if the CIA, right, or the Air Force, whoever, came out and said, Whitley, that whole thing, it was us, it was staged.
I would soon be a billionaire, I'll tell you that, because I would be suing them out the wazoo.
Right. Would it surprise you? There were so many claims. When I say claims,
well, here would be my immediate question: what was your motive?
Right.
What was your motive?
To cover
something up? You wouldn't have picked a high-profile person like me if you were just studying people. You picked somebody who was going to go out and talk about this. What was your motive? To get them to go out and talk about the very thing you don't want talked about.
Right.
And that was what eventually made me decide it wasn't us, because there was nobody there. The initial possibility was, in my mind, once I realized it was not a dream, was that someone had done this to me to try to drive me crazy, because I had published a book called War Day and then Nature's End, and I was doing things that there were powerful people in and out of the government did not want done. They didn't want those books. And I thought possibly that was what had happened. But then I came to the realization that something else had occurred, because I kept remembering this going up in the air and the strange things that had been done to my body. Something else had occurred, and the beings were so vividly real. And then it turns out that Bud Hopkins had a lot of other people who had seen the same thing and had similar experiences to me. And yet I had my experience where I had no idea such people even existed.
With the MyLab events and those that have come out and spoken about that, it always seemed to me, I want your opinion on this, that those were done as a copycat of a real experience like your own. And so when you hear why would the government go and do something like that and mess with somebody? Is it because there's been a sighting in the area and they need the cover up, or is there another agenda involved? Because the two are going on at the same time. You have the real abductions, you have the real contact, you have the real sightings, and then you have these staged events. Why?
Well, I don't know what I've never been exposed to a MyLab event. The closest I came was when the implant was put into my ear. It was done by two people, a man and a woman, and there was people outside too. I could hear them talking at one point. So I think there's something to Richard Dolan's breakaway civilization idea, but the initial abduction was an alien abduction. I'm pretty sure. It could have been some interdimensional thing or something else. I mean, I never closed the door on other possibilities, but that's what it seemed like to me.
Right. When we I always talk about physics, right, and physicist, and this ties into what we're talking about now. But from your comment earlier about from your science friend, right, and how that is happening today, and where scientists now are could care less. I believe, right, and so when you're around somebody like Avi Loeb, and which I've done dinner, I've hung out with him. He's a very intensely smart person, right? At a
Yeah.
level of, and you and I
Well, he is the head of the Department of Astronomy at Harvard. He's
right,
going to be smart.
it ran the Black Hole Initiative and program, and everything else. So a very intensely smart guy, but he is on the same page as us. And that's a very
About the abductions?
ET visiting this planet. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
interesting. He interviewed with me one time and then would never come back. So I figured that, he talked about Oumuamua, and we didn't talk at all about abductions. And he
I think he has a complete open mind. He knows the phenomenon is real, and
Yeah.
he's just got he's sitting on too much information. And then you have somebody like Gary Nolan, where you've got Harvard and Stanford, right, and these two very intelligent PhDs, very outspoken about these subjects, and I don't think it's ever been like this before.
Well, that's the thing that's so interesting, is that these real heavy hitters are on side. And, I know Gary very well. We're good friends. And he's just adamant. He says, I've got tenure. I've got the biggest lab at Stanford. They're not doing anything to me. I'm going to do exactly what I want to do. And this is what I want to do. And it's only scientific interest. He has a high level of scientific interest in this. And he's a very, very smart man. He knows whereof he speaks. He's like Kit Green. I mean, he was with the CIA for years, and now he's in private practice. And one of the things you can count on is when you have physical issues because of this, and I'm not the only one, there's loads of abductees can write him an email, and he will immediately get into it with you. And he has the experience of knowing so much, both on this side of the classified fence and on the other side, and he can really give you very good advice, medical advice about it. So those guys are invaluable to us.
So to swing this around to where we are now in the conversation, with everything that you have experienced and your ability to investigate and to try to figure out what's going on, is this confirmation of where physics is today? That there are multiverses. There is a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th dimension. There's something else that is going on at the quantum level. Does this support all of your experiences?
If there is a multiverse, then it is a statistical certainty that someone in it has learned to navigate it. So if there is a multiverse, then it is certain that someone is here. If the universe is just the physical universe, that's less certain. But I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It's quite possible. I mean, I've had some very strange parallel universe-like experiences that I went into in my book, A New World, pretty extensively up at the Lakota Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. And it was this was a 3-day period where when I closed my eyes, I could see in detail another version of the place of the place we were in, right down to if I looked down at the ground I would see one set of gravel and little weeds and flowers with my eyes closed, and another set with them opened. And this went on for 3 days. So, yeah, the there, I think parallel universes exist. I think there is another universe that's right here, and there may be other physical universes beyond the one we are in. And so therefore I think I'm right when I say statistically it's inevitable that someone from those universes will be here. And I'm also saying that this is why I think that wormholes are a primary means of transport, because NASA is studying wormholes extensively as means of travel, and they're doing that for a simple reason. They know they're real. I'm sure that's why they're doing it.
Well,
And
you saw the press release, right, last week?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And we also know that the math of a wormhole from here to a parallel universe is a lot more viable in terms of the amount of energy it suggests would be needed than moving across this universe. And this is a simple reason. If you think of the universe as like a big slab of metal, and there's one place on it over here on the left and one place on the right, and you want to go instantaneously between the two of them, you have to bend the whole universe until they touch. Then you can move, and then it snaps back again. The problem with that is very simple. In order to bend the universe, you obviously must have access to more energy than it contains. Ergo, a wormhole that moves from one place to another in this universe maybe is impossible. But if you're going to penetrate from this universe to another universe, given that I did it without any wormholes or technology of any kind, and as usual in the Whitley case, blundered into it or had it handed to me on a platter without knowing it was even possible, obviously it's not a supercritical energetic issue at all. Listen, there's some more questions from my people, from my subscribers.
Sure. Okay, get the questions ready. I just have a comment though.
Sure.
It cannot. ET does it not because it takes up the energy of the known universe. They do it because it doesn't. Right? They do.
Right. Exactly. They do it because it doesn't.
Right.
But as far as we understand it, if they are from this universe, then they would have to have more energy, and the universe would be affected. There would be a lot of energetic consequences, but that doesn't happen.
No,
which means that they probably are from another universe.
No, maybe, but since we're riffing, Whitley, let me bounce off of that one more time. Here's the thing. It is debated on our side with our knowledge of where we are now, with what we understand about quantum physics and what we understand about quantum anything or physics or math, and our general knowledge. That's where we base this thing on. Al Alcubierre and Kip Thorne and those that have, including Avi Loeb, the energies of a black hole and a wormhole and what would it would take to utilize those. That's based on what we know now. I didn't hear anything from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory when they created that wormhole last week and actually, in their words, teleported information. Those are their word, not mine. Sounds like something I would say. But what they didn't say was that it took the known energy of North America to make this happen. No, they didn't say that. They didn't say that at all. So I just don't believe that it would take the energy of all of the known stars in our universe to create one single black hole. No, I don't believe that for a second.
Wormhole.
A wormhole.
The black hole would be bad news. A wormhole, not so bad.
But
Well, maybe it's possible to create a wormhole from one part of this universe to another without using that much energy. But we know it's possible to do it between this universe and a parallel universe.
they may exist naturally too, as well. And maybe you
That's
just
right. I mean, maybe they harvest them.
And what is so crazy about when you look at some of the infrared and different man, I just had a crazy floaty in my eye that made me jump out of my skin. That was weird. It seemed real for a second. It flew by me. Here's the thing: when you see these deep views of the universe, and you see the gases on how the galaxies are connected, and these nebula, man, you know what? You don't see that with the naked eye. And that certainly feels wormhole-ish to me. But here's the other part: it's natural. So why wouldn't that happen naturally? So yeah, just like the rivers flow here on Earth. Why isn't there something like that that's out there riding gravity waves?
Well, they may be able to find these wormholes.
Mhm.
You never know. I mean, let's get through some of these questions. They're quite good.
Sure.
Okay, here's one that's probably a lot of people's minds, but they never quite get to it. What's the timeline of the abductions? When did they really pick up? Well, that's a simple answer there. The first ones began to be reported in the late 50s. They surfaced in the Betty and Barney Hill case in 1963. They picked up very dramatically in the 1970s. And then in the mid 80s, they began to taper off slowly until now, when they're rare. In fact, I haven't seen a new abduction account in a couple of years. So
Yeah, that's
if someone was here harvesting material, they finished, obviously.
Well, okay. Can I answer that in my own?
Of course. No, you can't answer, John. It's your show.
It's your show.
I control it when it's your show.
And that concludes this episode of Unknown Country with our guest Whitley Strieber. So here, but this is something that I'm convinced of. It's not one race. It's not one species. It's not one.
It's not.
It is a nearly infinite number of intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations out there, just in our Milky Way. I'm not talking about the universe. I'm talking about there are billions just around us in our solar neighborhood, stellar neighborhood, right here. So it from all directions around planet Earth, you can go south, north, point in a direction, and there is tens of thousands of planets with life on it. If you just hold up a dime in the sky, right, just right there. So, how many are knowledgeable of planet Earth and have been here?
Well, sometimes I think
it's an infinite amount. How many?
Anybody can go anywhere except us, and we can't go nowhere.
No, right?
So they can come here and play games with us all they want to.
Well, but isn't that what we are trying to do? We're trying to get there. We're looking. We've got James
exactly.
Webb.
And what we would do if we found a planet that had another intelligent species on it that had never left its planet and didn't know how to get there, get out, and we saw that they were about to destroy themselves, we would do two things. We would make a record of them, a biological record of them, and we would try to communicate with them. And the second part of it would be far more difficult than anyone has ever imagined. And in them, I'm going to go through exactly why that is.
Why?
And it is true. It is not possible for them to land on the White House lawn and give the president plans to a starship. Cannot happen.
Why?
It cannot happen because their brains are not going to function like our brains. And give you an example from
I like
our world.
Okay.
Nothing, a mouse can never hear the voice of an elephant, nor an elephant the voice of a mouse. They can't do it because their perceptual systems are too different. The mouse cannot hear tones as low as those made by the elephant, nor can the elephant hear tones as high as those made by the mouse. Now, if you add to that the fact that they may not even see light in the same way that we do, and their brains may process information very differently from us, it is going to be the single greatest achievement in human history and possibly in their history to successfully create useful communication between us. And that is why on that night, when I heard this, all I heard from them in terms of voices was a mechanical voice repeating over and over again, "What can we do to help you stop screaming?" Now, they weren't, they, if they had understood us even a little bit, it would have been saying, "Do not worry, we're not going to harm you. You don't need to scream. We will return you to home." But instead, they were simply asking a question, and not even the right question. The right question would have been, "What can we do to calm you down?" Not, "What can we do to help you stop screaming?" See what I mean?
Yeah.
They weren't communicating, even though they could generate an artificial version of our language.
The reports of what do we do with, Eisenhower at Holloman, Eisenhower at Edwards, contact different state actors around the world what do we do with those stories?
Well, first of all, we don't know exactly what those stories are about and whether or not they're even true. And second, I would think that if there was a face-to-face contact with a state actor, whoever was doing it would have worked out some means of communicating that was effective, at least for that purpose. But when you talk about communicating with a whole species, no, I don't think they're even close to that. Like us and the dolphins, we cannot know what is going on between them when they make their sounds. We can teach them to play ball with us. We can teach them all kinds of things. We can cause them to go through the motions of communicating with us. But the gulf between our language and therefore our vision of the world and their vision of the world is uncrossable. Uncrossable. And it's even more uncrossable, I would think, when you're dealing with someone who evolved in a completely different parallel planetary environment, and possibly even in a different universe with different physics.
So they don't give a crap then?
Of course they do. They wouldn't be here if they didn't give a crap.
No, I don't mean it like that. What let me rephrase. The defense retracts the question, Your Honor.
I didn't realize we were having a debate.
Is this? Is it the same as scientists going to the rainforest and looking for new species? Right?
No, it's much more like Jane Goodall trying to communicate with the chimpanzees.
Yeah, but she cared about the chimpanzees.
Well, they may care very much about us, but the chimpanzees were very iffy about Jane Goodall.
But okay, but I don't know if they were concerned about your feelings or emotional well-being.
They weren't.
With that anal.
They were on a mission, and they were going to do that.
Right.
They wanted me to stop screaming, but that didn't necessarily mean that they wanted me to be happy with what was happening.
Right. Right. Well, so Jane Goodall wouldn't have freaked out the chimpanzees.
No. Here's another great question. Could quantum computers be used to aid in the communication between us and the visitors? And that gets me to AI, because we might really have something with AI. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why don't they do that?
They do.
And the answer is obvious.
Yeah.
They don't have the ability, or they would do it. Unless they just don't want to, because what they're doing with us is something we definitely do not want, and they don't want us to figure it out. So they don't want to communicate with us. They just want to do their thing.
All right, since we're riffing here on Unknown Country, and welcome everybody back to another edition of Unknown Country, is this though? When we are talking about quantum, I really feel, Whitley, that ET has got entanglement down. They understand it. And that's their ability to communicate across vast distances.
I would guess that's the case. Because we know it works. We've experimented with enough to know it works, but it's very unstable for us. And also the amount of communication that you can achieve is minimal. The U.S. Navy has been intensely interested in quantum communication for obvious reasons.
Right.
But so far, so bad. We haven't gotten it to the point where we have a quantum communicator that could even communicate simple code.
Yeah, because it's, one qubit at a time, one entangled particle at a time.
Exactly. And it's also, the entanglements are unstable.
But this is my take. All right. And especially when we're dealing with channeling and, Bashar, it's not an entangled particle. It's entangled particles. That's the communication. It's entangled brains. Entangled
minds. I think you might be right. Yeah. And I think that, I've suspected at times that this universe might be more of a mesh consciousness, and that we might be, for some reason, kind of out of the loop, out of the mesh. We're not part of it.
Why not? I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, why not? Why do I have to always be? We have to always be the ones that are hit upside of the head instead of allowed to walk through the front door. I mean, what's wrong with us? And it's not something wrong with us, I don't think. I think it's something right with us. I think they are exploiting us, whoever they are, wherever they're from. And I think that's probably the reason they have orchestrated all of this secrecy, so that the average person will not realize this is happening and this is real, because the secrecy empowers them, and disclosure destroys their ability to move freely among us, doing what they wish to do on their own time and in their own way.
Whitley, you meditate. Have you ever received a download?
I don't know what that is, and I've wondered about that. I hear these things about downloads, and what the hell is this? And yet at the same time, I may be receiving downloads without knowing what downloads are.
Sure.
Like I every once in a while, I get into a kind of dialogue, and when I do that, I will pick up my phone and I will take notes I will dictate notes into the phone. Let me see. I probably got some in here, in fact. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is 12:15:22. Bright souls transmit light. They are balancing. Black souls absorb light. They are active. White souls reflect light. They are passive. Souls are not creatures, but states. These states live within creatures, or may do so. Now, I can't tell you that I can explain all of that I just read, but that's what came. I guess that's a download, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty deep, actually.
It's very deep. Well, I can go through it actually. Bright souls transmit light. That means that these are souls with mastery, and they have something to give to others. Black souls absorb light. This means that these are essentially students who are learning, and they're covered in blackness because of the fact that they are there to absorb this light. And white souls reflect light. These are souls that are, for whatever reason, not willing to or not able to accept the transmission of those that are bright, that are shining. That would be my guess as to what this means. And that's, that doesn't happen often. Usually it's much more sort of, I won't say technological, but it's much more about my work, where to go with the writing and what I need. And it's wanted that I form very specific questions about what I need in my research. And inevitably, in a few days, the answers drop into my life in the form of, I find a book or something. But the key here is attention. You have to have your attention acutely tuned so that you will notice when these things come in your daily life.
Last night I cannot believe that you just said what you just said about the colors of the souls, because last night Susan Slaughter was on the show and she said this, Whitley, trip on this. She goes into this state, that part doesn't matter, but she says that she looks down at herself and she doesn't see herself. She sees herself as flat black absorbing light.
Well, she's a student.
Yeah.
Probably most of us see ourselves that way.
Wow.
That's what we are here. This is a school and we're the students.
2 nights in a row, same statement. Two different.
See, that's how that's how my whole thing works. That's not a coincidence. It's a teaching.
Right.
And it's saying basically, this is true. This is correct. The black souls are there absorbing the light. These are the students. That's what we are. And that's what she is. Probably what I am too. And you. I hope I'm not green or something.
I'm in detention. I'm in detention. I've got Saturday detention if I'm the student. Can I go back on the time machine for a second with you a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Before we run out of time. Years ago, I'm probably, let's say 15 years ago, I'm listening to Dreamland. I'm listening to, one of your things. And I was listening to you and your guest riff, and you guys were riffing, right? But you said one thing, and you guys, I can't remember who the guest was, but you were talking about civilizations in the deep past, 10, 15, 100 million years ago, and what was going on. It was a great, fun conversation, and you guys were speculating on things.
Michael Primo, maybe.
And then you guys swung it. The conversation comes around, and you said something that profoundly changed me. And I want your comment on this. You said that the little blue guys may or may not have been E.T., and you felt that they may be us in the afterlife.
Yeah. Well, that came from actually Anne's secretary, Laurie Barnes, who had an experience in the 50s, in the early 50s, when they showed up in her bedroom, the little blue guys, and she's lying there alone in the house at 11 o'clock at night, reading a book, and pregnant with her first child, and suddenly these bizarre looking blue figures are standing beside the bed. And she was naturally extremely concerned. And she recoiled in horror. And the leader said, "Do not be afraid. We're not here for you. We are here to, we're interested in the girl child you're carrying." And of course, they couldn't tell whether or not it was a boy or a girl in those days. It did turn out to be a girl, and whom I've interviewed as an adult. And she's a very nice woman and has a certain level of experiences in her own life. In any case, then she continued to recoil, and he put his hand on her wrist and said, "Why do you fear us?" And she said, "Because you're so ugly." And he then said, "One day, my dear, you will look exactly like us." And I thought to myself, that could be a very important statement, because it could be that we are a multi-part species, like caterpillars and butterflies, or tadpoles and frogs. And who's to say the caterpillar wouldn't find the butterfly terrifying? You know?
Are the blue guys, the blue beings? Two questions: are they existing in another dimension and stepping into this one, or do they exist in our dimension and come from somewhere else to visit us?
Well, two questions that are both easy to answer with the same three words: I don't know. I don't know. My chat room's popping. Let me look in here.
Yeah, here on Unknown Country, we have the best chat room. And hello to everybody in the chat room.
Were the creatures grays? You discussed them as spider-like. Well, that was earlier, actually. They're grays. If you're with the grays, they're very thin, and they have long, thin arms. And you'd think spider, but that was the grays. That was what we call the grays. But I want to go back to the communion experience. And when we were talking about it, and you were asking me, I was a little hesitant about, did I completely buy into the fact that they were aliens? Then I said, yeah, they probably were. But I would not close the door on the question. And then we started talking about my labs. I would not close the door on any of these questions.
Right.
I don't know what happened. And I don't, I know something physical happened because I was injured. I was injured in two places, side of my head and my butt. But what I don't know is exactly who was there that caused that. I can describe very precisely what I remember, but that doesn't answer the question. Nothing will answer that question ultimately, unless I was to get a flying saucer and be able to show it on a street corner, or take it to the Smithsonian. Then we would have some answers, especially if it had a bunch of rectal probes in a cabinet.
Right. Right. I have to say, Whitley, I've done 2,000 shows, and I have never said rectal probe more in any show.
Well, I hope it doesn't bother you, because it took me years before I could even say in public that I had been raped. And it was unfortunate, because I should have said that right at the beginning when they started with when South Park started lampooning me. I should have gone on the air and said, "Hey, wait a minute, I got raped. I mean, why is that funny?" But I didn't. I was so humiliated, and I was treated for it for 20 years. It was a significant injury.
Right.
And the first doctor who treated me knew what had happened, but the subsequent ones never knew. They just knew that there was scar tissue there to be treated.
Okay, so let's stay on the subject. That scene, and it's kind of funny because I just brought up the blue guys. Are the blue guys that we were just talking about, that they may be us, are those the same blue guys that were depicted in the movie in that scene?
Yeah, they had those big flat faces,
Yeah.
and they were about that size.
Yes.
That's what I remember.
Really?
That's what I remember seeing. Yeah.
I always wondered about that.
The grays in the movie are not very realistic, but the blue guys are closer to what I remember.
Hey, they did the best they could with those puppets.
They did. I mean, they did the best they could. And I said to Philippe Moron, my brother did too, you should darken this. You should make these scenes, in the room much darker. But he wouldn't do it because we didn't have the effects were not effective. The only one that's really works is when that thing looks in the door at me of the bedroom.
That's messed up scene, man. It's
a really startling experience.
Messed up scene.
Well, I had another experience like that that's not connected to the movie in any way. Some years later, we were lying in bed. We'd just been doing an all-day thing at some kind of a retreat up there in upstate New York. I forget what it was called. And we were lying in bed, and suddenly this thing, it was very unformed, comes rushing into the room. And I immediately pick up the table beside the bed, leap out of bed with the table over my head, hurl it at the thing with all my might, and scream, "You'll never get me. You'll never get me." And to this day, I wonder what that was.
Wow.
And why I knew what it was at that time so clearly that I considered it something that I would never allow to get me.
It's a good thing you didn't have that Italian riot rifle.
I had it. It was under the tape, under the bed, but I didn't get a chance to. That happened too fast. It's a Benelli riot gun. Respect your weapons. And one of the first things you do if you respect your weapons is your weapon's name and all of its functional capabilities. Do not forget this.
Whitley, Merry Christmas. We have a dinner date planned, so I am looking forward to us breaking bread. Whitley and I are going to get together, and we've made plans. We're going to talk about Egypt all night. I can't wait.
Okay, we're going to go to Egypt together.
Yeah, we're doing that next year. It's going to be awesome.
Wonderful.
Whitley, you said the book, hopefully January?
Hopefully January. I will be yelling and screaming when it comes out. Don't worry. I'll be begging you to let me on again. And then you'll say, "Oh, sure, I'll let you on. It'll be $500 an hour."
What's the new book called?
It's called Them.
Oh, that's right. Them. Thank you so much, my friend. And if I don't talk to you, just have a great, safe, fun, amazing Christmas. And are you going to go down and hang out with the family?
I certainly am. And then I'm going to Texas right after Christmas to hang out with my aunt and my friends.
There you
go. My other family.
Safe travel.
So,
I'll see you.
Thank you. You have a great Christmas too. And everybody listening, have a great Christmas and a happy new year. And don't forget the Dreamland special. It's extremely cool for one simple reason. Jimmy Church is in it.
The link for Unknown Country is right there. We've got it throughout social media and over on the website. Whitley, Merry Christmas, my friend.
Peace. Peace, brother.
The absolute very best, Whitley Strieber. And again, the links for Unknown Country are right there. We've got it on social media. Go and check it out. Whitley and I had a great conversation yesterday. We had a great one right now. So Merry Christmas, Whitley. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers there are no announcers. Webmasters, Drew the Geek, music, Doug Aldrich, intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is only copyrighted 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night is our Merry Christmas AMA. Until then, be safe. Go Backley Tappy.